They gave him a car. Me? A broken bike. He got a 5-star party. I got frozen lasagna. For years, I thought if I smiled more, worked harder, maybe they'd finally see me. But the moment I scratched that $3 lottery ticket, everything changed. And they never saw it coming. It all hit me hard the night my brother, Nathan, got the keys to his very first home. Everyone was buzzing around, beaming with joy, taking selfies in front of the sold sign. And me? I stood in the corner, holding a cheap cupcake. No candles. No claps. No one even turned to ask how I was doing. Hey, Emma, can you take a few pictures of us? That was all they said. No one asked if I wanted to be in any. Ever since I was old enough to notice, I knew I wasn't the star of my own life. I was just the quiet shadow in the background of Nathan's spotlight. He was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. Tall, charming, straight-A, student, varsity athlete, basically a walking Hallmark card. And I was the extra, the afterthought. From birthday parties to parent-teacher conferences, I was always introduced as Nathan's little sister. Never just Emma. The gift that never fit. I still remember that Christmas when I was 9. The way the lights twinkled off the tinsel, the scent of cinnamon candles filling the living room, and the way everyone's faces lit up for him. Nathan tore into his gift with the kind of joy kids write letters to Santa about. A brand new Nintendo Switch. The exact one he'd been dreaming about all year. The room exploded in applause like he'd just won a gold medal. It was my turn. I carefully unwrapped a crinkled piece of paper and pulled out a gray hoodie. Size XL. The logo of a local HVAC company stitched across the chest. A 40% off clearance tag, still clinging to the sleeve like a cruel joke. It hung off my shoulders like I was drowning in it. Mom chuckled. Oh, this one will last you a few years. And you look so cute in oversized stuff. I smiled, nodded, turned away so they wouldn't see the heat rising in my eyes. That's how it always was. Year after year, moment after moment. When Nathan turned 17, they gave him a shiny red Ford Fusion, wrapped it in about the size of a beach ball. A reward for a hard-working son, Dad said, his chest puffed with pride. When I turned 17, I got a rusted bike from the neighbors. The back tire flat. The handlebar bent so far left it looked like it had survived a crash. When I blinked in surprise, Dad just shrugged and said, "Biking keeps you healthy, Emma." I didn't argue. I just rode that broken thing to school. Through snow, through rain, even when my fingers turned purple from the cold. Every milestone I hit felt more like a footnote in Nathan's chapter. One birthday, two worlds. I don't remember the last time I had a real birthday. But I remember Nathan's 19th like it was carved into my memory. My parents went all out, rented a sleek Italian restaurant downtown, hung twinkle lights from the ceiling, and invited what felt like half the city. There was a 2-tiered cake, gold lettering that spelled out his name, and a jazz band playing in the corner like it was a scene out of a movie. Laughter echoed off the marble floors. Glasses clinked. Toasts were made. And I stood behind the camera, snapping photos like I wasn't even related to them. Then came my own 19th birthday. No balloons, no calls from relatives. Just the 4 of us sitting at our creaky kitchen table. Mom pulled a frozen lasagna from the microwave and slid it across to me with a laugh. I was too busy to cook anything fancy, but hey, lasagna's good enough, right? You don't need all that over-the-top stuff like Nathan. I smiled. That same tiny smile I always wore when my heart was quietly breaking. I nodded because I didn't want to ruin the evening. Not that it felt like my evening, anyway. That was always the rhythm of my life. Watching them celebrate him like he was the centerpiece of some grand painting, while I blended into the wallpaper. We lived in a quiet, middle-class neighborhood in the Ohio suburbs. Beige 2-story house, white picket fence, a wooden lawn sign that read, "Family is everything." But to me, that sign may as well have been a framed lie. In our kitchen, Mom was always bustling around, trying out new Pinterest recipes to impress guests. Dad loved firing up the grill, especially when Nathan's friends came over. They'd blast music, laugh loud, and jump into the neighbor's pool like they owned the whole block. Me, I was the one slicing cucumbers, setting the table, cleaning up the mess afterward. "You're such a helper, Emma," Dad would say, handing me a lukewarm soda like it was some kind of trophy. You're a real team player. And every time I passed by the living room wall, I saw a gallery of Nathan's life, graduation photos, shiny sports medals, snapshots of him with mom and dad, all smiling like they belonged in a family photo frame you'd find at the store. I was there too. Sometimes, just a blurry figure in the corner, holding the camera or adjusting a chair. Never the focus. Never just me. The price of becoming someone when it came time for college. Nathan didn't even have to lift a finger. Everything was handed to him. Tuition, books, housing, meal plans, even a fully stocked mini fridge. He needs to focus on his studies, Mom said proudly, almost tearfully, like he was about to cure cancer. And me? I filled out my FAFSA alone at the kitchen table. I juggled part-time shifts at the campus library, sold my old textbooks online, and worked weekends just to afford gas and instant noodles. I clipped coupons and rationed printer paper like it was gold. But I never complained. I was already trained to expect less. Some nights, when my roommates were out living college life, I'd sit by the window with a bowl of dollar store mac and cheese and tell myself maybe it wasn't that bad. Maybe this was normal. Maybe I was just being too sensitive. Maybe the reason I didn't get help was because I was stronger. Or maybe, as Mom once said, it was because you don't need much. But the older I got, the harder it was to convince myself that what I felt wasn't real. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't a phase. It was favoritism, plain, brutal, and constant. Not a feeling, a fact. By the time my own graduation rolled around, I knew better than to expect anything grand. I didn't need a marching band or champagne. But I thought, maybe a nice dinner? A hug? A moment? Instead, we sat in a noisy burger joint on the edge of town. My parents seemed more interested in checking their phones than the milestone I'd just reached. At the end of the meal, Mom handed me a plain white envelope with a grin that felt almost performative. Inside, a $3 scratch-off lottery ticket. We thought it'd be fun, she beamed. Hey, you never know. You might win big. Dad added, chuckling like it was a sitcom punchline. No cake, no gift, no card. Just a thin piece of hope disguised as a joke. I stared at it, then at them. I guess this is the only shot I have at getting something meaningful from this family, I said quietly, the words slipping out before I could stop them. No one denied it. No one even flinched. That was the moment everything inside me shifted. Like a switch had been flipped. I realized I'd been clinging to the idea of a family that only remembered my name when they needed someone to do dishes or take photos. I wasn't just in the background anymore. I was completely invisible. But what I didn't know that night, sitting in that plastic booth with ketchup stains on the table, was that the $3 ticket in my hand, the one meant as a throwaway laugh, was about to change everything. Rock bottom, third floor, I brought the scratch-off ticket home in a wallet that was falling apart, the same one I'd used since high school. The corners were peeling, the stitching frayed like it had seen too many years of disappointment. My apartment was on the third floor of a weathered building in Columbus, Ohio. The kind of place where the hallway lights flickered like bad horror movie effects, and the heater made sound like a ghost trapped in the pipes. One corner of my window was cracked, and I lived with a mouse I named Oliver. Not because I liked rodents, but because at least he noticed when I came home. I dropped the ticket on my kitchen table next to 2 packs of instant ramen, an overdue electric bill, and a half-empty bottle of generic soda. It sat there, untouched, its metallic shimmer catching the dim yellow glow of my busted ceiling light. I thought about tearing it up, tossing it in the trash, burning it even, but I didn't. I left it there, because in a weird, twisted way, that lottery ticket was the only thing that felt like mine. My graduation gift, my legacy, my family's final stamp of how little they believed in me. That night, I curled up in a chair someone had given away for free on the side of the road. It smelled like dust and old memories. I wrapped myself in a thrift store blanket and stared across the room at that stupid little ticket, glowing like a cruel joke in the shadows. Nathan had just moved into a $220,000 house in the suburbs. Front lawn, picket fence, garden boxes, 2-car garage. I had $3 worth of pretend hope on a paper rectangle that could barely hold itself together. I remember that last dinner like a bad dream you wake up from, but can't shake off. Mom beamed across the table as if she'd handed me a crown instead of a scratch-off. "You should be grateful," she said, stuffing leftover ketchup packets into my bag like consolation prizes. "Who knows? Maybe you'll become a millionaire." Dad barely looked up from his phone. "We had to borrow money to help Nathan buy that house," he muttered when I asked if they could help with my student loans. "You understand, right?" I let out a laugh, dry and sharp, like a piece of glass stuck in my throat. From that moment on, I stopped showing up. No more family dinners. No more calls. No more group chats filled with birthday wishes I never received. I got a job writing ad copy for a small marketing agency. In the mornings, I wrote cheesy slogans for cleaning companies and budget nail salons. At night, I waited tables at a greasy diner off the freeway, cleaning ketchup off booths, dodging drunk men with bad pickup lines, and dragging my feet 4 blocks home afterward. No one waited up for me. No one asked how my day was. But at least it was my life, my little space in the world. People asked why I didn't just cut my parents off completely. Truth is, I didn't know. Maybe some small, stubborn part of me still wanted my mom to show up at my door, wrap her arms around me, and whisper, "I'm sorry, Emma. I see you now." That never happened. Instead, I got forwarded emails with subject lines like 10 signs you're a selfish daughter and family is everything. Appreciate them before it's too late. I didn't open them. I just hit delete. Sometimes Nathan would text, "Can you help move some patio chairs?" Or "Amanda's picking new colors for the kitchen. Ash gray or a cream?" I wanted to scream, "I'm not your free labor. I have my own life." But I didn't. I just typed, "Busy, sorry," then erased the chat like it had never existed. The ticket that waited, it was a slow, gray Sunday. One of those days where nothing moves. Time feels like it's dragging its feet, and even the wind outside forgets to blow. I decided to clean, not because I felt like it, but because it was easier than sitting still with my own thoughts. I swept the floor, scrubbed dried sauce from the sink, and tossed out a stack of old newspapers that hadn't been read, just hoarded like forgotten years. That's when I found it. The ticket. It was stuffed in the back of a drawer, wedged between a rusted pair of scissors and a roll of tape that hadn't worked since college. I pulled it out like it was some relic from another life. The silver coating still shimmered under the flickering kitchen light. I held it in my hand for a long time, longer than made sense. The same graduation gift that had once felt like an insult now felt heavier, like it had soaked up every ounce of silence, disappointment, and unspoken pain I'd been carrying. Matched 3 symbols. Went up to $10 million. I placed it on the kitchen table. Didn't scratch it. Didn't even touch it again. Because here's the truth. If I scratched it and lost, it would be over. That last sliver of fantasy, that whisper in the back of my mind that maybe life could turn around, would vanish. And all I'd be left with was the truth. I was still broke, still forgotten, still Emma. But if I left it untouched, then maybe, just maybe, I still had a shot. A chance. Even if it was 0.001%, it was mine. Sometimes, we'd rather hold on to a dream than wake up to a reality that hurts. So I didn't scratch it. I went to bed with the ticket still lying there under the yellow light, like a ghost I didn't want to disturb. It stared at me from across the room, like it was daring me to believe in something again. That night, I dreamed I walked into Nathan's house, held the ticket up in the air, and said, "I won. You don't get to treat me like I'm nothing anymore." In the dream, I laughed. Not out of joy, but release. The kind of laugh that says, "You never saw me, but now you will." I woke up before sunrise, made the same cheap instant coffee I always did, slipped on my worn coat, and waited for the bus in the cold morning air. The ticket was still on the table. Still unscratched. Still carrying the weight of 1,000 forgotten birthdays. And I wasn't ready to know the truth yet. Not because I was afraid to lose, but because for the first time in my life, I had something that no one could take from me. Hope. Left out. Again, I didn't find out Nathan was engaged from phone call, or a message, or even a passing mention from Mom. No, I found out the way forgotten people usually find out things, by accident. There was buried inside the family group chat I had muted months ago. A blurry photo popped up on my lock screen as I scrolled past notifications during my lunch break. In the picture, Nathan was kneeling in the middle of a perfectly manicured flower garden, his hands stretched out, holding up a ring that looked like it cost more than my car. Amanda, his girlfriend of 2 years, stood across from him, sobbing into her hands, and behind them, Mom and Dad, beaming like they'd just witnessed a miracle. Below the photo, a caption from my mother, with more pride than I'd ever seen her put into any message. He proposed. We have a new daughter-in-law. So proud of my son. That word hit me like a slap. Proud. Proud. It had never been used for me. Not once. Not in texts. Not in birthday cards. Not even whispered behind closed doors. I stared at the screen, not really sure what I was feeling. It wasn't jealousy. Not anymore. I was used to Nathan getting the fanfare, the attention, the praise. What got me was how unsurprising it all was. It felt like my life had already been written by someone else, and I was just rereading a script I never agreed to. 2 weeks later, I got a call. Mom's voice poured through the speaker like syrup over pancakes. Sweet, controlled, calculated. Emma, we're throwing an engagement party for Nathan and Amanda at the end of this month. You'll be there, right? I'm working double shifts, Mom. It's going to be hard to pull away. Oh, come on. It's not every day we get to celebrate something like this. I've already booked the restaurant, invited over 80 people. Even your dad's relatives from Pennsylvania are coming. 80 people for an engagement party. When I graduated with honors, we barely managed 8 around a takeout box. I'll try, I said. Old habits die hard, especially the one where I still felt the need to say yes, even when my chest was hollow. A stranger in my own story, the party was held at one of those upscale restaurants I used to walk past on my way home from work, pressing my face to the glass, wondering what it would be like to be on the other side of the window for once. That day, I wasn't in an apron or carrying a tray. I was a guest, or so I thought. I wore a plum dress I had bought last season. Clearance rack, 70% off. My hair was pulled back into a neat low bun. My heels had worn soles, but they still clicked confidently against the marble floor. The moment I stepped into the room, I felt it. Like I didn't belong. Warm golden lights filled the space, jazz music humming low, guests swirling around in laughter and white wine. The room buzzed with conversation, the kind that made you feel like everyone else knew each other, except you. Nathan stood in the center of it all, his arms wrapped around Amanda like they were royalty receiving the blessing of the crowd. They were both in white, beaming under the lights, cameras flashing like they were already famous. Mom and Dad stood beside them, champagne flutes in hand, radiating the kind of pride that burns when you realize it's never been pointed in your direction. Not a single person noticed when I walked in. Not one. I poured myself a glass of water, wandered toward the edge of the room, and found a seat near the window. From that quiet corner, I watched as guests floated past me like I was just part of the decor. Every conversation echoed the same song. Can you believe how amazing Nathan is? Amanda is such a gem. The wedding is going to be absolutely magical. A cousin leaned over and whispered to someone, not realizing I could hear, his parents are covering everything. Venue, honeymoon, even the house renovations. I nearly choked on my water. The Maldives, I overheard. Nathan and Amanda were honeymooning in the Maldives. I never even had enough money to leave Ohio. And there they were, picking tropical islands off a globe like it was a game of luxury roulette. It wasn't jealousy. It was the final straw. The lie of fairness, of family unity, of we love all our children the same. It shattered right there between the buffet and the fake laughter. As the party wound down and people began saying their goodbyes, I quietly slipped toward the exit. But Mom caught me before I could vanish. There you are. Why were you sitting off to the side? No one could see you. I smiled, the same kind of smile I wore my whole life. Well, you and Nathan had the spotlight. I didn't want to steal the show. She laughed nervously, but her eyes flickered, like she could sense something had shifted, something she no longer controlled. So, what did you think of the party? She asked, trying to sound casual. I paused, tilted my head. Grand. Very Nathan. She blinked, that flash of concern again, like she could hear the bitterness buried under my calm voice. You should be happy for him, she said finally. He deserves all this. He's worked so hard. I nodded slowly. And what about me? She looked confused. I mean, when I graduated, no party, no cake. No one asked what I wanted. Just a $3 lottery ticket. That was your gift. She let out a laugh, like I was joking. Oh, come on. We were tight on money back then, after helping Nathan with his house. And you're strong, independent. You didn't need much. I swallowed hard. My chest felt like stone. And now you're paying for Nathan's wedding. And their honeymoon. What next? Another house. A family trust. Mom's expression tightened. Emma, no one's stopping you from working harder. If you want what Nathan has, earn it. I laughed. Quietly. Bitterly. I wake up at 5 a.m., Mom. I get home after midnight. I work 2 jobs. What you call not trying hard enough is my real life. Her mouth opened like she wanted to argue, but she didn't. Instead, she frowned. Your tone is very disrespectful. I kept smiling. I respect the truth. You don't. Then I turned and walked away, leaving her standing alone, the music still playing behind her like the credits of a movie I no longer belonged to. The line between broke and free, I pulled over at a gas station that night. The kind where the lights buzz and flicker like they're as tired as the people standing under them. I sat in my car, hands on the wheel, asking myself the question that had followed me since childhood. How far have I really come? The answer hovered just out of reach. Stuck somewhere between exhaustion and hope. Back home, I dropped my keys on the counter and walked straight to the kitchen drawer, the one where I stashed everything I didn't want to deal with. Unpaid bills, expired coupons, pens that didn't work, and that lottery ticket, still untouched, still intact. I picked it up, the paper soft at the corners from months of sitting still, untouched, but heavy with meaning. It wasn't just a ticket anymore. It was a lifeline wrapped in quiet defiance. I stared at it for a long time. This was the line, wasn't it? Scratch it, and find out if my entire life had been leading up to yet another disappointment. Or don't, and let the dream survive a little longer. Because that's what it was. A dream. A flicker of maybe. A whisper that things could finally be different. But I'd had enough of not knowing. My fingers trembled as I grabbed my phone and pulled up the Ohio State Lottery website. The glow of the screen lit up the kitchen, casting long shadows across the countertop. I typed in the numbers slowly, like I was defusing a bomb. 8, 15, 27, 34, 42, 56. My heart thudded so loudly I could barely hear anything else. I tapped check results. The screen loaded, and in 2 seconds, less than the time it took to breathe, it appeared. Congratulations. You won the jackpot. $195 million. I didn't scream. I didn't even blink. I just stood there, staring at the screen, the numbers burning into my eyes like they were too surreal to be true. Then, slowly, I slid to the floor, back against the cabinet, hands cradling my head, trying to breathe, trying to believe. A dry, cracked laugh escaped my lips. $3. A clearance birthday joke. And now, I was a millionaire. I didn't call anyone. Not Mom. Not Nathan. Not even my best friend. I stayed up all night researching exactly what to do if you win the lottery. The first rule came up on every list, tell. No. 1. The next morning, I called a financial advisor. Someone with a clean office in the suburbs and 5-star reviews from people who didn't use exclamation points in every sentence. Her name was Carol Landry. Sharp eyes. Calming voice. The kind of woman who made you feel like you weren't about to ruin your life. While I walked in her office, I was shaking. Not because I was scared of the money, but because I was scared of what it meant. First, she said, calm and professional, we don't use your real name to collect the winnings. We'll set up an LLC so your identity stays private. Second, we don't tell anyone. Not yet. Not until everything is protected. I nodded like a student in the front row of a class that could change my life. What about taxes? After deductions, you'll walk away with around $125 million. I swallowed. Hard. I used to count pennies for gas. And now, I had a number in front of me, so large it felt fictional. Carol helped me build a plan, investments, savings, legal protections, and a strict no-spending policy for the first 6 months. I followed every word like scripture, because deep down, I knew the second my family found out, they'd come running. not for me, but for the money. And I wasn't going to let them. Not this time. The quiet rise, the first thing I did was simple. I paid off my student loans. One click. A clean break from 4 years of ramen dinners, campus jobs, and crying over interest rates I couldn't afford. When the confirmation email hit my inbox, "Your balance is now $0, I burst into tears. Not loud, messy sobs. Just quiet, steady ones. The kind that feel like freedom finally slipped under your door and took a seat at your table. Next, I quit my diner job. No notice. No bulais. I left an envelope behind the counter for Linda, the manager who once gave me a free meal on a night I looked too tired to speak. Inside was $5,000 in cash and a handwritten note. Thank you for being kind to me when the world wasn't. Then I bought a car. A black Audi Q5. Leather interior. Subtle, clean, nothing flashy, nothing screaming look at me. Just something that felt mine. When I sat behind the wheel for the first time, it hit me. I wasn't the girl hunched over dirty dishes anymore. I was driving, in every sense of the word. But I still showed up at my marketing job. I still drank cheap coffee in the break room and laughed at bad puns in morning meetings. I didn't want to raise suspicion. I wasn't ready to change everything all at once. I just needed space. So I moved out of my apartment, rented a small villa tucked into the western suburbs. White walls, stone porch, a garden lined with lavender. No mutts, no neighbors stomping upstairs, no one asking where I was going or why I worked so late. Each morning, I made coffee from an actual machine, not a $10 burner from the thrift store. Each night, I sat on my balcony, legs tucked beneath me, listening to the trees sway and the birds call out into the dusk. I didn't throw parties, didn't update social media, didn't text anyone about it. I lived quietly, carefully, fully, because this peace wasn't something I inherited. It wasn't handed to me at a graduation party or gifted in a velvet-wrapped box. I earned it. My family still thought I was working 2 jobs, living in a rundown apartment, scraping by. And I let them, because I didn't owe them the truth. Not anymore. They'd spent years ignoring mine. One afternoon, Nathan texted me, "Hey, can you help us pick out a new sofa? Amanda wants a second opinion." I stared at the message for a long time. Then I turned off my phone. No reply. No apology. Just silence. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't just surviving. I was living. Not for them. Not for praise. Not for crumbs. For me. When they came knocking, I didn't post anything. Didn't update my status. Didn't share photos of my car. Didn't so much as like a comment. But even silence isn't safe from algorithms. It started with a photo. Why didn't even take? An old college friend had posted a picture of us grabbing coffee at a cafe in the suburbs. She tagged no one, said nothing special, but in the background there I was, leaning against my Audi, coffee in hand, wearing a coat that didn't look thrifted. 3 days later, my phone rang. "Emma, how have you been?" Mom's voice. Too soft, too sweet, like honey stirred into tea you didn't ask for. I almost laughed out loud. "I heard you moved," she continued. "Got a new car, huh? Funny, it's close to Nathan's neighborhood. What a coincidence." I said nothing. She kept going, the kind of nervous giggle in her voice she only used when she was trying to bait a hook. "You should come over for dinner this Sunday. The whole family misses you." I agreed, not because I missed them, but because I wanted to see exactly how far they were willing to go. Nathan's house hadn't changed. Same manicured lawn, same glowing fairy lights on the porch. Same oversweet smell of lemon air freshener that clung to the curtains like desperation. I brought a bottle of wine, nothing flashy, just expensive enough not to be judged, just cheap enough not to invite questions. The moment I stepped inside, Mom's voice hit me like confetti. "Emma, you look so different." She hugged me like we'd been torn apart by war. Nathan came in behind her, wearing his favorite white polo, the one that made him look like he was always on his way to a magazine shoot. "There she is," he said, flashing that same smile. "Come check out the new sofa." I nodded. "Looks big." Dinner was a blur of steak, overcooked carrots, and small talk. The kind of conversations that float around the room like helium balloons, light, pointless, and prone to popping. No one asked what I did now, or how I was. It wasn't until the third dinner they finally dropped the act. That's the thing about people like them. They can only pretend so long before the performance cracks. We were halfway through soup when Nathan cleared his throat and slid a stack of papers across the table. Blueprints. Estimates. Numbers circled in red ink. We're planning to expand the house, he said casually. Amanda wants her own yoga room. I could use a bigger garage. At the bottom of the page, a handwritten note. If possible, please contribute $22,000 to help cover wedding overages. I set the paper down gently, very gently. Mom leaned in, her voice coated in sugar. It'd be so helpful, Emma. I mean, you're doing pretty well now, aren't you? I looked at her, really looked at her. Doing well, I repeated. Thanks to the $3 lottery ticket you gave me when I graduated. The room fell into a quiet so deep, you could hear forks clink against porcelain. Dad sniffed. Nathan looked down. Mom, try to smile through it. We were struggling then, she said. You know that. I do, I said, nodding. I know Nathan got a car at 16. I know you paid for his tuition, even when he had a partial scholarship. I know he had an engagement party at a 5-star restaurant. I know when I asked for help with my student loans, you told me, try harder. My voice wasn't raised. It didn't need to be, because truth, when spoken quietly, hits louder than a scream. And now, I added, because you think I have something you're suddenly proud? Suddenly calling me part of the family again? Mom's eyes welled with tears, the kind you pull out when you're backed into a corner, not when you're truly sorry. I just want us to be close again, she whispered. You can't live your life stuck in resentment. I stood up slowly, chair legs scraping against polished tile. I'm not stuck, I said. I'm free. I live in truth. You live in denial. Nathan called after me, his voice low and sharp. You should know how to share, Emma. We're family. I turned to the door, smiling. No one's stopping you from working harder, Nathan. Then I walked out, leaving them seated around a table filled with food, lies, and the sudden realization that I didn't need them anymore. The quiet goodbye, I didn't cry on the drive home. I didn't shake. I didn't replay their words or pick apart what I should have said differently. I just rolled down the window, let the night air kiss my face, and breathed. For once, my chest didn't feel tight. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even sad. I was just done. When I got home, I went straight to my phone and did what I should have done years ago. Block my mom, then Nathan, then my dad, when he tried to call me from a different number 2 days later. I didn't do it out of spite. I wasn't punishing them. I just finally accepted that peace and proximity aren't the same thing. And I was choosing peace. The days that followed felt like stepping out of a smoke-filled room. I could breathe. I could think. I wasn't jumping every time my phone buzzed, wondering what do they want now. I moved to a new house in the northern suburbs, quiet, tucked away, surrounded by trees and space that felt like mine. A black iron fence wrapped around the front. Roses lined the walkway. Inside, there was a reading room with windows so tall, sunlight poured in like it was blessing the floors. No one knew I lived there. Not coworkers. Not neighbors. Not a single person from my past. To them, I was just Emma, the quiet girl who freelanced in marketing. The one who worked remotely, kept to herself, and walked to the corner cafe every morning for her oat milk latte. They didn't know I'd once cried over a clearance hoodie on Christmas. They didn't know I once worked 2 jobs to pay off textbooks. They didn't know I once held a $3 lottery ticket like it was the last string tying me to hope. And I didn't need them to, because for the first time in my life, I wasn't living to be understood. I was just living. Every morning, I brewed coffee with the Italian machine I splurged on, my one luxury. I took walks through my rose garden barefoot. I played piano at night. Not for an audience, not for praise, just for me. I invested like Carol told me to, slow, smart, steady. Rental properties, blue chip stocks, a few startups that excited me. The money grew. Quietly. Invisibly. I never bought a mansion. Never flashed designer brands. Never stepped back into the spotlight. I didn't want attention. I wanted space. Friends who found me online said I seemed calm. Former coworkers guessed I'd inherited something from a distant relative. A neighbor once asked if I was a novelist, since I spent so much time on my balcony, sipping wine and typing into my laptop. I let them believe whatever they wanted, because the truth didn't need an audience. That fall, I flew to New Orleans and listened to live jazz with strangers who didn't know my last name. In the winter, I tried skiing in Colorado and fell so hard I nearly broke a rib. In the spring, I signed up for a painting class in Austin. And in the summer, I stayed home, grew tomatoes, read books, played piano, sat in silence, and smiled. Not because everything was perfect, but because for once, everything was mine. The final confrontation, it happened on an ordinary afternoon. I was sitting in a cafe, downtown, small, cozy, tucked into the corner of a street where the trees leaned in like they were listening. My laptop was open, earbuds half in, the smell of roasted espresso lingering in the air. And then I heard it. That voice. Emma. I turned, slowly. Nathan. He looked different. Not bad. Not unrecognizable. Just dented. Like life had finally stopped handing him things and started asking him to earn something. His shirt was wrinkled. His eyes shadowed. Hair messy in a way that wasn't styled but stressed. He pulled out a chair and sat down without asking. I didn't stop him. Didn't greet him either. I heard you made it big, he said, not quite meeting my eyes. His tone was casual, but the edge in it was undeniable. I sipped my coffee, eyes still on my screen. Did I? He gave a laugh that didn't quite reach his face. People say you won the lottery. I mean, I saw you driving an Audi. You live in the suburbs now. Traveling. Eating out. Fancy stuff for someone who used to eat frozen lasagna on her birthday. I didn't respond. He leaned back, arms crossed. His voice dropped, sharp and measured. Don't you think you should share with the family? I closed my laptop, slowly. Looked him straight in the eye. Family. I repeated. Oh. You mean the people who gave me a scratch-off ticket for graduating college and told me to try harder? He tried to smile like it was all a misunderstanding. Everyone makes mistakes. But let's be honest, you just got lucky. That's all this is. A fluke. A win. Not something you earned. I paused, not angry. Not hurt. Just done. Maybe you're right, I said. Maybe I did get lucky. His smile grew like he won a point. But then I kept going. But the luck ended after I cashed that ticket. Every dollar I've kept, every investment I made, every quiet move I took to build a life where I didn't have to beg for recognition, that was me. I watched his face tighten. No one helped me learn how to handle millions. No one protected me. No one taught me how to navigate a world I wasn't supposed to be part of. I figured it out. Alone. The same way I always have. He said nothing. So I stood up, slid my laptop into my bag, picked up my coffee, looked down at him one last time. I'm not lucky, Nathan. I'm just not yours anymore. And I walked away, leaving him there, in a crowded cafe where for the first time in his life, he wasn't the one being noticed. That night, I sat on the balcony. The garden lights cast a soft, golden hue across the grass, and the lavender swayed gently in the summer breeze. Jazz played low from a speaker near the door. A glass of white wine rested beside me, untouched. I leaned back in the chair, the one I picked out myself. The one I didn't have to assemble alone at midnight or salvage from someone else's curb. And I smiled. Not the kind of smile you fake for family photos. Not the polite one you wear when your name is forgotten in conversations you helped make possible. This one was real, because I didn't need them anymore. Not their validation. Not their guilt-wrapped invitations. Not their selective love. For so long, I had believed that being seen by my family was the only way to matter. That if I just gave more, helped more, stayed quiet longer, I'd finally earn a seat at a table I was always setting, but never eating at. But now I understood something no one ever taught me. You don't have to be chosen to matter. You don't have to be invited to be whole. I wasn't the forgotten sister anymore. I wasn't the girl in the background holding the camera. I wasn't the name they remembered only when they needed help moving patio chairs or picking out a kitchen backsplash. I was me, and that was enough. I had traded the stage they pushed me off of for a life where I wrote my own lines. No more applause I had to beg for. No more performances. No more roles I didn't audition for. Just a life. Mine. I started an anonymous blog. Not for clout, not for followers, but because some part of me still needed to release everything I had carried for so long. I wrote about letting go, about being raised in a house where love came with conditions and praise was reserved for someone else's name. I didn't write for revenge. I wrote to reclaim my voice. And little by little, others found it. Comments rolled in. I felt this. I thought I was the only one. Thank you for saying what I couldn't. And I realized I wasn't alone. There were thousands of us out there. Girls in corners. Women on the sidelines. Sons who were forgotten. People who grew up trying to earn love that was never meant to be conditional in the first place. That, more than any dollar amount, felt like winning. I didn't need a party. I didn't need champagne. I didn't need a headline. Because peace doesn't come with a parade. It comes quietly, with mornings where no one asks for anything, with coffee made exactly how you like it, with dinners where you aren't trying to prove you deserve a place at the table, with knowing deep in your bones that you have nothing left to prove. And so, as the wind whispered through the lavender and the stars blinked quietly above me, I leaned back in my chair and whispered to myself, this is freedom, not the kind you win with a scratch-off ticket. The kind you earn when you finally stop waiting for someone else to see your worth and start building a life where you do. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button, share this video with your friends, and subscribe for more real-life family dramas. Let me know in the comments what you think about today's story. Was it fair or totally messed up? See you next one.